We are live. Joe.
All right, guys. Hey, everybody. This is Joe the Lawyer, and we are here with Rob Connolly. Matt Jackson is leaning sideways because he has painkillers, and he thinks he's upright, but he's really sideways right now. But now, yeah, all right. And then Greg Christopher is over there. He is the little potato man, I believe. And we are here. Eric is joining us soon. He had to step away. He's going to come back in a bit. So we're going to talk much shit about Eric while he's gone because he can't defend himself, of course. So that's how we roll. Oh, there's a hey. Oh, he's listening in. He's just showing he's listening in there. All right.
He was showing us his hairy ass.
That was better. Yeah, at least there's worse things I guess he could have shown us. I guess if we were to get right down to it. At least he's not in tidy whities. That's a good thing, So, guys, so this is the Random Party Generator live stream, and we are talking to you here from all across the gosh dang country. Rob, Pennsylvania. Matt, somewhere in the middle. What were Matt?
Tennessee.
Where are we at? Tennessee. Yeah, right in the middle, right? Somewhere in the middle. All right. So yeah, and I'm over here on the East Coast. So here we go, guys. So
where's Greg at?
Huh?
Where's Greg?
Greg is here. I don't know where he's at. Are you there, man?
I'm in Atlanta.
Atlanta. All right. There you go.
Terrible town.
Goddamn hot too. It's just hot down there, man.
So we're the Random Party generated east of the Mississippi.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah, it's Matt. Are you east of the Mississippi, Matt?
Yeah, Tennessee's east
you
of
sure?
the Mississippi.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Memphis is on the Mississippi River.
Somebody described to me once, she's a doctor, and she says there's the East Coast from Boston to DC, there's Chicago, and then there's California, like LA up to Seattle, and then everywhere else is places with bad coffee. That's how she's just phrased it. So I don't know. That's I kind of stuck though. It kind of stuck with me a little bit. But I've never been to many other places.
Different worlds, I'll tell you that.
It is absolutely, because I lived in Colorado, man. There's a whole different culture out there.
Yeah.
It's a whole different culture, and the shit you could draw upon that. Like last podcast, we're talking about the Castle Rock thing. That's just landforms. I would never have seen anything like that living out here on the East Coast. It just shit doesn't exist like that out here. You gotta have a broad, diverse. Oh my, did I just say that? You need diversity of location, geographic location to make your D&D games better. Diversity of experiences, I guess we're saying there. Yeah.
15 years ago, I was often on the road for my company installing in mostly specialty jobs, metal cutting machines. And so the usual pattern is I fly out Monday, get to the customer site on Tuesday morning, and do my stuff 3 days and then fly back home on Friday. And so evenings I had, go back to the hotel or something. And often I would visit the local gaming store, and it was pretty neat. What that stuck out in my head was Savannah, Georgia. I think Morningstar Games is a store down there.
Mm-hmm.
And Savannah is it's a planned city back, from the 18th century. It's very beautifully laid out. And when I got there, they were looking there was a bunch of people. They were looking all dejected as to what happened. Oh, a DM bailed. We were going to have organized play tonight. So I was thinking, well, I'm a skirt of the Demon Wolf. I'm an author. I was planning on publishing it. I could use a play test. But I didn't have anything with me other than dice and my notes and stuff. So I used these little mini D6. I said, he had one of those boxes that come 24 for a pack. And I said, how much is that? $5. I'll buy it. And those were my minis for the night.
Nice. Have you guys played, other than conventions, have you ever, sounds like Rob, you've been in a different city to play. You guys ever played in a place with a bunch of people that were like, I don't play D&D like this. This must be a geographic thing. Has that ever happened to you?
No.
No?
I play with a bunch of guys from Texas and Florida on Saturday night, and it's just the same as playing with you guys.
I wonder about the universality of it all. You know what I'm saying? I wonder how much people play differently in different geographic locations. I think it was different back in the day. Like the way guys played, the way they played in California, there was no central hub like the internet to share knowledge, right? We had Dragon Magazine. There might have been newsletters, might have been a few people who went to conventions, but I know that I was worried when I started playing with everybody on the internet about 10, 12 years ago, you guys and everyone else, because I'm like, well, maybe my D&D isn't the real D&D. Maybe this isn't the way most people do it. Maybe I do it differently. Maybe I suck. Maybe I'm weird. And then I started seeing other people do it. I'm like, all right, that's kind of like me. And then I'll learn something here, learn something there. And it just became a place to grow. And, it was like fertile soil in a sense. But I wonder if that's ever been the case in the last decade or so. These new kids starting up, they're watching Critical Role. They're just seeing everybody just like pasteurized, homogenized D&D. I wonder if that's that's ever going to be a thing.
We're all operating from the same foundation, but I mean, even now, most people aren't involved in anything organized, and I'm counting things like forums, being part of a Facebook, is participating in a form of organized gaming. But the vast majority, the only contact they have with the larger hobby is maybe a few news sites. They're talking to the game store owner. Then it's much whoever their circle of friends is, and it's always quirky.
And that's how it started with, I think, all of us, a circle of friends, right? And that's where we got into it from. Whoever had the book played it first and say, hey, how about this? You want to try this new game? That sort of thing. That's where it always began, I think,
Yeah, I started playing second edition at a camp in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned from guys who were, I was 13, they were probably 17. And, like it was just hey, they're playing this game. And we showed up, watch what they did and then copied them. And, kept it going from there. I haven't noticed, there's been definite differences in play between that time and today, but it's still very similar. Describe what you're doing. There's some kind of interaction where the GM decides how it's going to resolve, and then it moves forward.
I wonder. I'm starting a game now. And the funny thing is, I did this whole video. My first video was about online versus in person, this and that. And I said if I had to do one forever, I would choose online because of various factors. You could go listen to video, but basically, it's interesting because now I'm going to start a game on Sundays if we can, whenever we can. Sunday mornings probably. My brother, me, his two daughters, and a friend of theirs. So we're going to start this 5th edition D&D game. And I got to say, it feels so good to be playing in person with dice and people in the room across the table from you again. Even though I said one or the other, I'd go with online because of all the benefits, there is something to be freaking said for playing in person with the people you like and care about, buddies and friends and family and everything else. Looking forward to it, actually.
Well, with your brother and his daughters, that creates a stability that is different from, 3 guys that have different lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we're going to teach the kids. What were you saying, Rob?
We get to play with our toys.
That's it. Yeah, we have to play with.
I can put your miniature and just.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I had to bring out I got this old. There's something called like a lawyer's brief case or a lawyer's case or whatever bag or something like that. It's like a big fucking. Think of a triple or quadruple thickness briefcase. It's for lawyers to bring books and all this crap in it, right? And so I had an old one from a dude who died, and I picked it up 20-some years ago. Thing is still sturdy. I put all my books in there. There's dividing cases. It's like that. That you can buy this thing off of Amazon. It's like the DM's bag, the bag of holding or something. I like mine better.
Oh, you mean this magic item my beautiful wife got me?
Oh, you got one? You got the bag of holding? Nice.
Yep. I have another bag I might use. But this one, this bag. So, folks, not like this is a sponsored video, but these bags of holding really do hold up.
Yeah. I've seen bigger ones too, Rob, online. They're like you carry everything. It's like a backpack of holding or something like that, They're pretty cool. But I had so much fun. I was like, I broke it out of the closet. I'm going through it. I'm like, all right, what am I gonna need? I got folders and I got books, and I'm like setting up. There you go. That's nice. It was just a good time, and I'm getting out the dice again. There's a dice I use here. There's a dice I use in person. And the kids need some dice. It was just a good time. We rolled up characters last night at my brother's place. The girls are like, because they're watching Lord of the Rings recently, they're really enjoying it. And so my one niece is going to play an elf named Lego Lass, a female, instead of Legolas. And we're rolling them up. And the only time we ever played was a few years ago with their Mensa Redbox. And they were younger. Attention span wasn't there. They weren't focused, blah, blah, blah. I didn't like it as much. But now, after watching Lord of the Rings and being older. You know, she's sitting like, my guy's a badass. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's 5th edition. Of course he is. But I'm looking forward to it, man. Yeah. Matt, do you ever play with your kids, your daughters?
Not really. My my wife absolutely did not support role playing. She thought it was stupid.
No shit.
And my oldest daughter is very much like her, so she was kind of groomed. My youngest one actually like play tested a couple things I wrote, but she's a lot more like me. But it's funny because when she went away to college, her first boyfriend was huge into D&D, like big time, and she was like, "Oh my god, I'm dating my dad." But yeah, none of the kids really got into it. They're girls. They were into shopping and doing all that girl shit. Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Rob? You got a couple of kids, right?
Yeah, I role played with them. You know, my eldest is autistic, so it's and it's unfortunately one of the forms of autistic that makes them hard to, especially when it was younger, to pay attention.
Yeah.
And my youngest, he played along with as well as my wife, Kelly, a couple of times. But he's more into he likes the like Minecraft, world building games like that.
Yeah.
And he's majorly into his VR. And again, in the VR, he likes playing creative games, but role playing not so much.
Yeah.
However, I did meet my wife, and we dated and fell in love while I was live action role playing.
Whoever has the bingo card, mark the chip.
But yeah, so you know, my wife has done a fair amount of role playing. In fact, I first heard of her because she butchered the town sheriff and chopped his body up and scattered the pieces throughout this wood. And at the time, she was this pretty young lady and just came out of the blue. And ever since that, we respected the hell of her and learned not to cross her.
I would imagine. Is her middle name Dexter by chance? I mean, that sounds like full on Dexter right there, dude. I mean, watch out. Don't piss her off and go to bed.
Her character's name was Alia Rose. After the Dune character, Alia the Knife. So
yeah. She was a badass too, man. Yeah, she slit Harkonnen's throat. Yeah, the Baron Harkonnen. Would you guys see the new Dune movie? As long as we're on Dune, we haven't really talked about that together, and even in game time. You guys seen that?
Yeah, the cinematography is incredible. I mean, it's like Inception level of just visually masterpiece.
Yeah.
I think it's as good as we're ever going to get as far as a movie goes. I mean, the only thing we would, if you wanted the details, then the only way to do it would have been a miniseries with that level of cinematography.
Yeah.
But for a movie, I think it's great, and I really hope that they stick the landing with part 2.
When is it coming? Do you know? Have you guys heard?
I think they're supposed to start filming this fall, but I'm not sure.
I hope they keep the same style, theme, look, and feel. My God, it was epic.
All the same crew is coming back.
That's great.
And everything.
That's great. Yeah. It was epic. I mean, I was one of the weirdos who liked the '84 David Lynch version, though.
I love the David Lynch.
I think the David Lynch version is always going to occupy a place in the geek's heart. But
it's weird, but it's fun. I mean, Sting is freaking fantastic, and it's silly at the same time.
Yeah. Sting was great. Yeah. And Fade Ruetha. I mean, Jesus, when I'm reading the book, I never pictured him being played like that, like Sting did. Sting played him like a freaking lunatic, and it was epic. You know, it's so different, but so epic. You know, I think that Lynch being a fan, especially the guy who played Paul. What the hell is his name? I forget his name.
Kyle.
Yeah, that McLaughlin or something. Yeah. He was a huge Dune fan too, so he took all the love of Dune that he had and put it into that role. You know, he really did.
Didn't he fight to get the role? Like he went after it, I think.
I don't doubt it, man. I mean, if you're that kind of a mega fan, I mean, and look at it. I mean, he stayed with David Lynch forever after that, right? I mean, he was his go-to guy.
Yeah.
Right. He was like Tarantino and that blonde chick. What's her face from the Kill Bill movies? You know, Uma Thurman. Yeah. You know, David Lynch became his dude. You know, so yeah, no, that was pretty good. Yeah. You guys hear about the D&D movie coming out, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you say, Matt?
I'll
Yeah,
believe it when I
actually.
see it, but I mean,
I hope it's great, but it's going to be like every other cookie cutter movie we get these days. You
Yeah, I
know,
agree.
built for general population approval. There won't be, I don't know. I'd like it to be dark and gritty, and
Yeah,
it won't.
it won't be swords
He'll
and
probably
sorcery.
crack one-liners here and there throughout the movie and be
Mhm.
like, "Oh yeah."
How do we make D&D into a Marvel movie franchise?
Yeah, well, that's what I think it'll be. They're going to try to do that. They're going to try to
you
create
can't make
these.
D&D because D&D is it's not like Marvel. Marvel is really the story about Earth 616. So that's a setting. D&D is just a toolkit to make a setting.
Yeah,
So, you're more about if you want a D&D movie. Okay, are you going to make a Greyhawk movie? Are you going to make a Forgotten Realm
No.
movement?
They'd make a Dragonlance movie. That's the one D&D property that can be made into a movie.
thank
The
God.
Dragonlance.
Fucking Kinder running around.
Oh, they're like Gnome's evil cousins. I'm mad.
Oh, I hate Dragonlance. I never liked Dragonlance.
But what else? What other D&D property can they make into a movie?
Birthright.
What?
I
mean, there's no story in Forgotten Realms, Greyhawk, or Birthright, but they all have. Well, you got Drizzt, of course. I like the first novel, but it got old pretty quickly after that. But
yeah.
Well, I think that's kind of the problem. When they came out and said we're making a D&D movie, what does that mean exactly? Because you could say like Lord of the Rings is a D&D movie.
Yeah, that's true.
We just applied a bunch of house rules, but it's a D&D movie. Rob's right. What's the setting? Yeah, Dave Thompson's right. They'll make a blue-haired Strixhaven movie. Yeah, and I think honestly, as much as I hate to say it, the movie ain't gonna be made for us. It's gonna be made for the 4 million people or whatever it is that watch Critical Role and love that kind of stuff. And we'll go to it and we'll be like, oh God.
The D&D movie was already made for us. It's called Conan the Barbarian with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
There you go.
That is the only D&D movie our generation will ever get, man.
Actually, Season of the Witch was like a very, non-famous.
Season of the
What's his
Witch
name? Nicolas Cage movie, and it's the most D&D movie I've ever.
Oh wait,
seen.
is that the one where he's a witch hunter?
He's tasked with transporting this girl.
Yeah, that's pretty good film.
To a monastery,
right.
and the longer it goes, the more D&D it becomes.
Really?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, the end fight is basically killing the boss of killing the vampire in.
I've never seen this.
Strahd, what it was his name, it's not a vampire, but like the end boss is like okay, you've killed this powerful, and if they'd had a looting scene after the climax of the movie, then it would have been a perfect Dungeons and Dragons movie.
It needs to be a good looting scene.
No, I never held out hope for a good D&D movie. For me, it's about Excalibur, Robin of Sherwood, big huge gap, Lord of the Rings, and maybe The Witcher there. But
Witcher, I'll give you that.
The Witcher is sitting between my B tier, which started with films like Hawk the Slayer, and there's a few fantasy shows that I really like, but.
Tim tried to get me into the Robin of Sherwood thing. He told me about it over COVID.
Good. Robin of Sherwood is awesome.
But here's the thing, Rob. It's awesome when you're probably 14. When you're 50 and you're watching this shit, I'm like, the fuck? I can't get drunk enough.
2 years ago. I rewatched it 2 years ago, and it still held up for me.
How much of it was because of nostalgia?
None
if you
of
had
it.
never seen it
before.
Solid
background.
If you had never seen it, Rob, you think you'd like it?
Were you okay? Let me ask you this: were you a Robin Hood fan before before watching it?
The only Robin Hood thing I've ever seen was that stupid ass Kevin Costner bullshit. Remember that one?
Okay.
Hey,
See,
That was
for me, I read the Robin Hood stories growing up, and I
all
loved
right.
Robin Hood. Okay, I like Robin Hood better than King Arthur. Okay, but so when I saw Robin of Sherwood, that brought those stories to life for me.
Mhm.
Way more than I mean, I saw the Earl Flynn's on Saturday afternoon movies, but the Earl Flynn was too cartoonish for it. But Robin Hood had all the classic elements, the way they were in the stories, but they had a more grounded spin on them. And so to me, that's one of my A+ classic, along with the movie Excalibur,
Yeah.
which is stylized to here and back. But that to me is a definitive that has yet to be beaten depiction of King Arthur and his whole cycle of myth. And it's only a movie though, but it just captures everything. Although there was a recent one called Sir Gawain and the Green Knight that wasn't
Mhm.
that I think did pretty good, damn good job. And
I saw that, and at the end of it, I was like, I wanted to say I like it, but at the same time, I hated it. I don't know why. It was weird because no, it was good. I mean,
Yeah.
the directing and the cinematography was amazing. It was just like I don't know. There was a lot of
well,
dramatic, quiet scenes, and it was just kind of like
You know.
I don't know. It was
well, the guy,
okay. I bought it so I could watch it, but hey, a couple of people in the chat group brought up some great, or in the chat, 13th Warrior.
Yes.
Definitely, that's probably
oh,
one of my
yes,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
all-time favorite films.
Absolutely.
And then
I would,
Lady Hawk.
Lady
Lady
Hawk
Hawk
and
is good.
yeah, Lady Hawk and 13th Warrior to
Willow.
me are B+ A- movies for me.
Yep. Yep. We got
Uh,
Willow, says Mark Hunt. That's a great one too. Princess Bride.
Yep.
oh,
Amen.
yeah, Princess Bride.
Willow was great. Willow was around the time I started getting into D&D. That was like mid-late 80s, right? Wasn't
Well,
Willow?
don't worry, they're gonna bring it back and ruin it for us.
Well, Willow, they're gonna recast it.
It's on Disney Plus.
Yeah,
Gonna
is
be
it? Oh yeah.
No,
All right.
what's his name's gonna be in it? The little guy, I forget his name. He's in all those
All right.
films.
And Eric has just typed in the chat. He has no home internet because he has probably the internet's messing up at his house. He's on his hotspot and it's not working. He spent 10 hours in the hospital today, but he's okay, guys. Don't worry. And he's going to manage the chat. So he won't be talking. You see his little icon there, but he's going to be in the chat putting up things. So he won't be talking because the hotspot doesn't cut it.
And I got to give a shout out to Matt because he said Legend. Legend is my all-time favorite fantasy film. And I know
I've
you're
never
all
seen
gonna
it.
shit on me.
I've never seen it.
No,
What?
I agree with you with Legends.
I love it.
I love Legends too.
Yeah, it's a little goofy at times. It's a little weird. The elves are, I don't know, little goblin type things.
It's pure. It's pure.
Yeah, I absolutely I love it. I if you sat me down and started and press play on it right now, I could recite it word for word. I swear
Really?
to God.
What version do you like? Do you like the one with the
original?
tangerine? The original?
Yeah,
I like that
I
better.
don't like the others. I actually sad story, but I actually bought it's like a limited edition DVD that came out this last fall.
Yeah.
It literally arrived at my house the day before I fell. It's still sitting in the wrapper in my bedroom.
Dude, I might have to watch Legend now. This is good. This is a good shit because
when
I was running.
So to be clear, Legends is a fairy tale, but it's a pure, excellent telling of a fairy tale.
Okay.
So if you go in there expecting a D&D movie or a Lord of the Rings movie, you're not going to get that.
Okay.
Just think it's a fairy tale.
Okay.
Just like Lady Hawk was, I wouldn't say a fairy tale, but it was definitely, it was more like Princess Bride, Lady Hawk. These are all like legend. They're about legends, and they're not meant to be like a gritty depiction of a world that could be with magic.
It's interesting. When I was running 5e a few years ago, I started playing it, right? 4 years ago, maybe. I had 3 groups going. I had my home group face-to-face. I had a group face-to-face at at a game store and one at the library. I would figure if I run the game 3 different places, I'll learn from, different people. Our brothers group, we're a bunch of old people. We're trying to figure this out. We got, less brain cells than we used to have. But the library group and the game store group are young people in their 20s. And I was making references like we all do at the table. We can make a reference to something and say, nothing is over. We all know that comes from Rambo. Every goddamn one of us knows that comes from Rambo, right? I make references and jokes and shit like that. And they're like, look at me like I'm a retard. They don't know what the hell I just said or what I'm referencing. Right? I say, and that affected the style of game I was running for him because I'm trying to run an old school grittier swords and wizardry game with a 5e system. It means I'm house ruling the crap out of it. But I said, here's what we're going to do. I said, I am going to give you XP for watching movies. And I put up on my blog back then, I said, I want I'd explained the situation. I said, I want movies that's going to get some 20-somethings to understand us. And so on the list was the standard, like Conan, Willow was on the list, Excalibur, even Monty Python and the Holy Grail. But I went outside the box a little bit because I wanted some things that were off, not exactly D&D related directly. I went with heavy metal, the original, not the new remake, right? As an idea to get the style. And the other thing I went with was Tombstone, Val Kilmer's Tombstone. Is there any more D&D-ish kind of thing than Tombstone? That was badass. And I say Val Kilmer, even though he was only Doc, because he stole the damn movie. It's fantastic.
Open Range is pretty D&D.
Yeah,
what's that?
Couple guys out, just they didn't even have a home at the beginning of the movie. It's an awesome Western, but
I've never heard of it even.
I got to watch it. Kevin Costner. It's really good. Open Range.
Like when not at my current job, but my previous job, we had a small group of like 6 people, and one was older than me, one was about my age, and then we had 2 people like mid-30s, and then we had some teenage girls that worked up front, and we would talk about movies, and I would mention all these movies, and none of them had seen any of them. And I was like, your cultural background is so different from mine. We're not even the same species. I mean, I'd mention like Time Bandits, and they'd be like, what? I was like, oh my God, that was a formative movie of my childhood. Legend.
You know what? It's hard when you know the kids that you're speaking with are geeks like yourself.
Yeah.
And they just don't get what you're talking about.
Exactly. It's the archetypes.
Like, you gotta watch Time Bandits.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not one of my favorites, but it's still a good movie for what we like.
Yep.
And it's like, you gotta watch it. And all the movies that we mentioned, they're like.
But see, that kind of goes to how we've been successful on the internet with a lot of the OSR stuff. Is you don't have to pitch to the whole culture. People are pitching things to a tiny percentage slice.
Yeah.
And there's so many people that are into that one slice that they can be successful, but we're not existing as a culture where everybody goes and says, oh, did you see whatever movie? Because everybody had a limited amount of choice. So you'd end up seeing, my dad will like randomly throw in like a Brady Bunch or
Gilligan's Island.
Gilligan's Island. It'll be,
Wait.
3 hour
Gilligan's Island? Are you saying
and
Gilligan's Island and Brady Bunch were a dad thing?
My kids have no idea what he's even talking about.
Rob.
Yes.
You forget how young Greg is, man. You forget how young Greg is and how old you are.
I grew up with Brady Bunch and Gilligan's Island.
I had a crush on Sidney Brady. I wanted to marry that
you were
chick.
watching Mr. Ed.
Well, I got to say, with Gilligan's Island, I caught the first wave of reruns of Gilligan. But Brady Bunch was happening during the early 70s.
But don't forget, you're far, 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 far older than us, Rob. I mean, if you think about it, I mean,
I forget.
You could be Greg's grandpa, couldn't you?
I know,
I don't think so. I'm 55, and that's.
I'm 51.
When do the aging penalties start coming in this game?
I know the Traveler aging table quite well personally.
Here's how you know, Greg. Here's how you know. I saw this on a TV show, and it was the most true, profound, perfect thing I've ever heard on TV. The show lasted 1 season. It got canceled, but it was about a show about a guy in his late 40s working with millennials, right, who were at the time in their 20s. And he's hanging at the bars, basically talking to a bartender buddy who was his own age. And he says, I can't hang with these guys. They're cultural differences, blah, blah, blah. And the guy says, you're old. That's why, man, you're old. And he goes, no, I'm not. And he's like, yes, you are. Here, I'll prove it to you. He goes, I dare you to see that chair over there. Go sit down without making a sound. I dare you. And he couldn't do it. And I dare any of you, anybody who's our age, sit down without making a sound. It doesn't happen. It does not happen. And when you get up, you're like, when you sit down and get up, if you hit a certain age and you're making a sound and can't stop it, even if you're conscious of it, you're fucking old. I guarantee you. So, Greg,
get
you
up
make
in
a
the
sound
morning
yet?
Snap, crackle,
I
pop.
don't make
all the
a
way to the
sound, bro.
bathroom.
Yeah, you'll make the sound, Greg, and that's when you're going to remember this conversation.
I don't know. I'm
Hey,
not a
Shadow brought up another classic.
What's
Crawl.
Crawl, yeah, exactly, with that fucking boomerang thingy he had.
Yeah,
that was
the
awesome.
glaive.
Yeah.
Everybody in my damn game world wanted to have the fucking glaive. Oh.
And how about the one that had the sword that had two side sword that launched out?
Yeah, that was Sword and Sorcery or something.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
I don't remember that one.
I had that in a game because I thought that was fucking amazing. You'd like
what I
point
made
it
up?
and shoot out
I'm
the middle
sorry.
blade.
Anytime one of my players asked for a crawl weapon or that sword, and those two made me roll my eyes.
I tell you what, the only thing that ever inspired me to make a weapon that I saw in the show, and you guys probably remember this, was my brother's sitting here in his fire pit right now listening to the story. I know he's here, he commented earlier, and he's going to remember this. He's going to know where I'm going because it's an embarrassing story for him. Was Battle of the Planets. Remember with Tiny, Princess, Keop, all those guys, right? I remember the Keop had the bolos. He had these, it was like a bolo, but it was like, magic, or not magic, technological and this and that. So I went to the store and I bought 2 of those rubber balls, right? And I got a whole shit ton of my father's duct tape and I tied string around them and I duct taped the string to the balls and I made my own Keop weapon. And so I remember he did some shit to me and I'm sitting in the kitchen and he did some shit. He walked up behind me, smacked me in the back head, whatever the hell it was, and he starts running away laughing. He didn't know I had my Keop weapon. Right? And bullets. I stood up like a fucking pro. I like swinging it in the air, boom, threw it at him. Fucking down the hallway, right? Nailed him in the ankles. He fell on his face. All-star win. Yeah, we called it G-Force, but I think it was actually called Battle of the Planets. That was the only one I ever made, and he fell on his face for it. And
yeah, it was the Sword and the Sorcerer, and then Tabletop Taproom brought up Beastmaster. I love Beastmaster.
Yeah,
that was one of my favorite ones too.
Yeah. I remember Beastmaster. That was kind of cool.
Swords Roberts,
yeah. Swords and Sorcerer. I don't think I've ever seen Swords and Sorcerer.
I think I had a couple players that wanted to play a Beastmaster. Where they have was it Kodo and Podo? I think were the 2 little ferrets he had. I think they were ferrets.
I guess as an ambassador of the younger people,
he's going to talk about New Kids on the Block.
I think that you guys also aren't taking into account that specific video games especially have had a massive influence. Skyrim, for example, being the titan of these. That Skyrim has affected the way people view this in such a powerful way, larger than any movie, larger than anything. The impact of kids playing. I have 600 hours in Skyrim. I'm sure there's a lot of people.
World of Warcraft?
Yeah, 200 to 300. Yeah. World of Warcraft, whatever it is.
But did that help the role-playing games, or did that?
Well, I'm saying it cements in what they see in their mind's eye, how they view the world, how they see everything interacting together. That you have towns that are surrounded by, wilderness areas with dungeons in them and things like that. It's really affected how people think.
But wasn't that? I'm lost because I started playing in the early '80s, and I'm pretty sure that I had towns and with dungeons.
It's a feedback loop. It's like one of those time loops on Doctor Who.
I'm pretty sure those games were influenced by a bunch of creaky dudes playing D&D.
Yeah,
I agreed.
It may be, but those guys weren't around in the 70s when you were, whatever. That's what they think. Somebody who's my kids, the first real video game in that setting for them was Skyrim. Permanently affected how they think about D&D.
Oh no,
I mean, and they don't even really. I mean, I didn't get into it earlier when you guys were talking about kids, but my kids are not really into. My son likes to play the Alien modules with me, but those are he just likes the intensity of it. But otherwise he gets bored. I mean, it needs to be super fast, like with the video game. And so I think it just the younger generation. I'm in the middle here, having had video games from when I was maybe 10, moving up. They've had video games since they were, before they could talk.
Yeah.
On iPads and stuff like that. I mean, it's a different,
Well, I
it's a
think
different
that's
world.
why, like in 5e, they have cantrips that can do damage. Because if you ever watch any video game, the mage at birth can be like
shoot fireballs out of his ass.
Fireballs out of his ass.
Yeah, but what they give you in that start, having played through all of this from nothing to what we have now, those pew pew spells are pew pew. Period. I mean, 1 point, 1 point, 1 point. You quickly.
No, I think doesn't 5e, don't they do like d6 damage?
No, I think they do some. Depends on the cantrip, but I think that the way you're looking at too is like I see somebody who's texted here. Zork, yes. EverQuest, yes. That was my peak in terms of video gaming, but I think that there's D&D players influence these games, but then these games went and influenced later editions of D&D. Not only in terms of the archetypes, but look, I think that because of the video games is why we have rogues doing backstab all the damn time. Always, no matter what, they can backstab in combat. In 5e, all they need to have by the rules is advantage, which I've house ruled away. But yeah, they could, and so it's because you want a combat game. EverQuest and shit, they don't have any non-combat things, really. Do some quests and make some things, but for the most part, you're trying to get out there and do some combat, and so you need to have a thief do something other than just steal shit, right? And because you want to be able to solo the guy. Yeah, and Dave, so I think because of that, it influenced the 5e and 4e games when thieves could always do stabby.
Do not underestimate the impact of raids in EverQuest, Warcraft, all these games. Whenever they have a massively online player, I like to play solo, but I have done this. I've touched on the raid aspect to know what's involved. These guys who really get into raiding dungeon, they are all about the min-max, not so much in like they just want a power game, because the game won't let them power game in that way. They have to form a team. Every team has a part, and if you're a player and you do not do your part, they'll boot you ass and recruit somebody else. And
Leroy Jenkins.
They really hate the Leroy, but and they have. And the most hardcore of these players will have spreadsheets and, try to figure out, okay, after this patch, what's the DPS of the various options? Okay, this is how we have to handle the raid now. Yeah. And some of that has leaked into tabletop. But as 4E showed, there's a limit to what the hobby will tolerate. Mm-hmm. So that's why we had the correction that occurred in 5E. So there's some of that in 5E, but it's been toned down.
Definitely. 5e is tolerable D&D. And Bad Mike makes a point. Most of the people working in D&D video games and years and beyond were ex-TSR and RPG writers. The credits are completely littered with people who worked at the major RPG publishers. He's right. Lawrence Schick, Kevin Hendricks, Janelle definitely did a lot. Somebody's knocking on my door, guys. Give me a second. I got to step away. All right. I don't know who the hell's knocking, but I'll be right back. Okay. Keep talking. Keep the show rolling.
This may be the first gang hit recorded on YouTube, guys.
What are you talking about? That's the stripper coming to get her paycheck.
Well, another alternative, I guess.
So, Greg, I guess you got a bunch of hexes done. Or Eric can just give us the news of the day.
Yeah, I did get a bunch of hexes done this week. It's been very productive. Now I have to write a whole bunch of dungeons.
So that's the last major piece of your puzzle, and before you can put it on the production.
Well, the last major piece is the monster that is editing. God, it's the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
And
are you publishing it?
Yeah, I'm gonna be. Yeah, I took the idea from Eric of using Grammarly. I figured out I don't have to do it in InDesign because I could just export it to PDF and then convert the PDF to Word, and it'll be able to be Grammarly.
Oh yeah.
And really? Yeah. And
so,
I'm
finding Grammarly.
Yeah, if I pay for the upgrade for Grammarly and run it through that should catch most of the errors, and then I can still have a couple people proof it. It takes forever. Especially on like a 300-page book to prove.
Yeah, next time
publishing.
What, you didn't like the editing process?
No, I don't have the attention span to write a 300-page book and then wait for it to be edited and then into layout. I just don't have the attention span for that. I'll be by the time something that I worked on. Well, for example, a friend of mine, Steve, wrote a zine for the last Zine Quest. I guess it was last year, I think. And I did the map. That was the inspiration for the adventure. And by the time the Kickstarter had kicked off, I really couldn't give a rat's ass because it was like a month later. For me, that's mentally, for me, that's like an eternity. I can't stick with anything that long. It's
my problem is that I have a solid overall. I feel like I have a solid idea overall, and then I would have, and I would say need 100 items to complete it, to get it to the point where I have to worry about edit and layout, and but in my head I only have like 36 items, and I have to come up with the other 64 items, and it
Yeah.
takes.
Well,
It takes me a while to generate those.
yeah. Well, part of it for me too is I sit back and I look at, something like Barrow Maze. Barrow Maze is pretty damn good, but and maybe I'm wrong, but I bet probably half of the stuff in Barrow Maze has been used. I mean, actually utilizing everything in a book that size, or even like say your hex map you were working on there, Greg. How many hexes did you have? 300 and something, I think you said.
304.
Yeah, I mean, will they all be used? For me, I don't know. I have a hard time putting effort into something that I know is not going. And that's one of the reasons I don't publish anything anymore, because I never really got a lot of feedback that people were utilizing what I created, and it was just like, the investment in not even thinking about the monetary for selling something, the amount of effort going in to create something, did it really create enough enjoyment to warrant the amount of effort I put into it? I don't know, maybe that's
I totally get what you're saying, but like in the case of mine, at least, I don't know about Rob, but for me, I don't like the quantum ogre problem where the GM just moves whatever he wants you to encounter to be wherever you go. So I want it to be that if you're in this town and you guys decide to go west, that it's not me telling you what's there that I want you to run into, whether you went east or west. There's something to the west. It's a fixed thing. You can scout it and come back. You can plan. You guys, when you were playing, well, you weren't there, Matt, but when Rob was playing on Monday night, they encountered this palisade fort. They could have easily withdrawn, gone back, scouted, prepared, done other things, come back. They chose to keep engaging and then go back. But you can just scout and find out what's out there and make a deliberate choice as a player. Whereas if you're being led by the nose and it's a very linear design, you can't do that. Now, the problem of avoiding that is that you have to over-design because you don't know which direction the people are going to go. Right? It's just inevitable.
So, Matt, maybe this will shed some light. So, I don't know if you remember my start with, but my first independent project was the Points of Light. Four very, in terms of what you could be writing with a hex crawl setting, 4 very concise settings, and then I wrote 4 more for the second one. And the feedback I got was you're right, nobody used it all, but everybody used a different part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I didn't, like anything else, not everybody gives you input on what you did or writes a review. But the reviews I got, it was interesting to me to see this person got something different out of the same product just because they were looking at this one part, and not just they were looking at the different chapter. I'm talking about areas within the same realm, like Southland or Wildland.
Hey guys, I'm back. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm got to drop for a little bit. Okay, I got somebody came by having a problem, knocked on my door. I haven't seen her bit, so I'm gonna step for a little bit, and I will be back in a little while. Okay.
Yep, it's a stripper.
The inmates are in control.
Yeah, that's true. Eric is gone. That's true. You three run the show. Roll with it. I'll be back in a little bit. Okay.
Okay. We'll try to keep it up.
All right.
So I don't know.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's just I kind of create for myself. I don't really create for anybody else. So I don't know. I guess I'm sort of, I don't know if that's selfish or what, but I really don't create for other people. I like the
I
map
agree with that's everything I've done has been with the expectation of if it makes money, that's fine. I'll use the money to buy more stock art for something else. Like it's never been profits. The idea of making a ton of money in this industry is
it's a pipe
dream anyway.
Yeah.
But to address Bad Mike's point about the con game, in the con game, hey, you're at the entrance to the dungeon, go down in the fucking dungeon. Don't turn around and start heading in a different direction. But I'm talking about in a longer campaign where people can choose to do whatever they want. I mean, one of the things I was going to suggest as a topic tonight before things started, I didn't get a chance to say it, is analysis paralysis. That on Monday night, we had 2 people out, and so the other guys just sit there and were just brainstorming for like 30 minutes about which direction to go, because they had like 7 different rumors of information. Like there's going to pyramid over that way, and there's a red dragon over there, and which way are we going to go? They just sat there and debated and debated and debated. So there's kind of 2 ends of the extreme. You got to find a way to balance that.
Yeah.
If Tim had been there, he would have been like, let's go, push everybody in one direction. But, Joe and Rob will talk about which direction to go for 30 minutes.
I don't think I was very chatty on Monday about that. That was pretty much Joe and the rest of the group. I was just sitting there absorbing information. But as far as I find Bad Mike's comment about the quantum over and Rob, because the party went the wrong way business. So, as you know, I mean, I haven't published very many adventures. I just published the one you experienced, the other one that I am going to publish. But what I try to do is, what I look for is, I try to, I don't know if pander is the right word, but I try to cater to what people expect. So, if I gave you the con setup in the game I ran for you guys, in that you were all members of the Bishop Court looking for a job, and you got a job. So there's your focus. So if I'm running a 4-hour con, the hook to the adventure wouldn't be to put the party here and say, go forth, find out what's going on. No, I would give a party a focus, some clear thing. It might not be the relevant thing, because I'll do a switcheroo in the midway, but you had a mission to go to the Abbey and get the tithe. And then all this other shit, happens, gets dumped in your lap. And the same way, that first encounter, when I first ran it, I wasn't sure how that, finding the 2 teenagers madly in love, different social classes, would play out. But after the second time I ran it, it became obvious what the parameters do and what people. Now, granted, you guys did something different than everybody else in that you just said, "Oh, kids, we saved your ass. It's good seeing you, but go that way. The bishop will take care of you. Bye." Everybody else felt a sense of responsibility to these teenagers to do something with them. Some of them hid them in the woods.
We believe in personal responsibility.
There you go. But the thing is, I tried to build it so, and I play tested to try to figure out what people would naturally do in this situation, so I don't have to guess when I'm actually writing it, which makes my module time consuming to create, because I got to run it, 8 or 12 times to figure out, all right, what do most gamers would do when presented with the situation. And one last bit, when I write, the one reason I like to write Sandbox is I write it for myself, but what I'm writing for myself is I like to set up a situation, and I want the situation to be interested. But what I'm fascinated with, if I set this up, what are you going to do with it? I don't have an expectation of what you're going to do with this, but I'm interested in see what happens. And so that's where I get my joy from. Is so when I wrote Black Marsh, um, I got an idea for something I thought people would be interested in, sort of like a fake Blackmore that they can reuse for themselves, even share, modify it, and share it on their own, and see, recreate a bit of what Dave did by flipping that map of Holland backwards and starting from scratch to see what I came up with. And and then after that, I got all these stories. It was just great seeing all these stories
Yeah,
about
it's
people.
it's a good product.
Thank you.
I've had it
And
for a long time.
Yeah,
it's
fantastic
it's
piece.
and nobody uses Black Marsh the same way. No two
Yeah.
people uses Black Marsh alike.
Well, I found even within one hex, people don't react the same. Like I've had a hex that has a giant eagle in it. You guys went through it and did everything you could to avoid the giant eagle. Oh my god, hide everything, cover up
That's
the
they've been playing
wagon.
in Comor
Yeah,
Forest.
we're gonna hide everything. I had another group that encountered the same hex, and they said we're gonna kill this eagle. They climb up to the top of the mountain. The eagle isn't there. They loot everything in the nest. There's all this stuff in the nest that they are able to loot. I rolled 4 times to see if the eagle came back, and it didn't. So they were able to go up there and loot everything and escape alive in the most reckless. That it was, 4 hit die creature would have ripped them apart, but they survived. Totally different decisions by different parties. One is super cautious, one is hyper aggressive. I would not have predicted that. Now Matt's
Yeah,
lost.
that's
Now we're lost, Matt.
it. Well, Bad Mike posted con games should have a definite beginning and end. Well, I agree about the beginning because a good beginning provides a focus that leads the player to the first set of choices, and then after they start making those, at least in my adventures, after you make those initial choices, if anybody's, it can go any way. But here's the thing: what I try to run at cons are situations that where to walk away is clearly the suboptimal choice, not just because of greed. Actually, greed is often a poor motivator.
What are you gonna watch?
But it's just like in your adventure, Greg, that you experienced. You're there to go to get the ties, and if you were to just go there and say screw getting the ties, even though it was just a one shot, that is kind of like a clear failure mode. And unless there was something happening so bad that you want to preserve your lives, you were going to get that tithe from that abbey. However, whatever it's going to be at stake. I mean, that's the feeling what I got from you guys, and that's what the feeling I get from most groups. But just as all the other stuff erupts too, and each group handles it in a different way.
Well, so, and this may not be possible with a very focused adventure, but I also think there's designing for the GM to not have a particular outcome that they're looking for. So if I'm going into the situation as the GM not knowing a number of factors, then it puts me in the position of having to imagine what would happen based on those factors. Where if the description is this is the way it should be, then it comes with me trying to enforce that. And so I'd rather roll on a table and be like, this is what's there. And I don't have any investment in that thing being there or not, or dying or not, whatever. And then that way there's no incentive. There's not even a desire on the part of the GM to try to affect things one way or the other. Just let it play out however you think would be reasonable.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that Savannah, that store in Savannah, Georgia, I told you about, that came late in the playtesting of Scourge of the Demon Wolf, And that group managed to find a way of completing the adventure without ever entering the main village. They're the first group to have done that.
Wow.
So they got the mission from the Baron to go deal with the wolf and make sure the villagers collected the harvest. They approached the village and they discovered the bandits who were taking advantage of the situation. From the bandits, they learned about the beggars, which is a nomadic group of rural thieves, basically. Uh, and So they went to the beggars, found out that the beggars were in the area, were staying in the area because the chief of the beggars' son was killed by the wolves. And so they talked about what the beggars knew about the area, went out into the wilderness, found the summoning site, went back to the beggars, talked some more with the beggars, found out there were mages living in the area, went to the mages, and that's when they found out that the apprentice was involved. And then they had to pursue her, had the final confrontation, killed the demon wolf, and more importantly, they had all the evidence. They have testimony from the mages. They had the stuff, the ritual stuff they were collected. So they decided we'll just head back to the Baron and said, "Hey, you can tell your village to collect that damn harvest. Now we know what happened and we dealt with it." So they never did any of the role playing in the village that the 11 other groups that I play tested this with did.
Eric
So
returns.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
It's been a wild ride, man.
Man, I went from cell phone to no phone back to. I don't know if the internet's going to last. Hotspots weren't working, but Verizon is back up as of now, only because I asked Alexa to turn on some lights and she did it. I went, wait a second. She shouldn't have been able to do that. So, yeah, and for some reason my green screen software logged me out and I don't know the login. So,
Oops.
do I look much worse for wear after spending 5 hours in pre-op?
You look like you were just released from the hospital.
Yeah, you look like you made a couple saves there, Eric.
Well, I just took mine off like an hour ago. I got tired of it.
I've got 2 wounds to show for it. This one is the one that doesn't count. That was we'll try to do the right thing by you and go in through your wrist. Oh, it's not working. It's a good thing we shaved your crotch. So,
Whoa, that escalated quickly.
Didn't it? Oh my God. So, in any case, I think I've caught up on the comments. At least that says something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not beer, by the way. It's hot tea. So I'm not drinking alcohol after a day at the hospital. Because Rach would find it to be very bad.
Sure. I took 2 oxycodines and I drank a cider earlier, and I could have laid on the carpet and the room would have spun around. I basically fell asleep on the couch because I couldn't get up. It was
incredible.
Yeah, it was bad.
I mean, for me, the funny part was hearing them offering the people to the left of me and the right of me Vicodin,
Oh, wow.
1 or 2 before going in for their procedure, and I was offered oxygen up my nose and a local.
Oh, wow.
I was like,
yeah, that's my problem. When they did this the first time, they gave me a nerve block, and they didn't do one yesterday. And honestly, I don't know why, because this hurts more than when I broke 13 ribs, if you can believe that.
I can believe it.
It's just they wrapped it up, drilled more holes, put a bigger plate in there. Fucking sucks balls. Oops, did I demonetize this?
No.
Joe was dropping the heat before you.
No.
It
As long as you
hurts.
don't use words that start.
Oh yeah. I can't use words that aren't comfortable.
You have my utter sympathy for your pain there, Matt. After my bout with gout, which was the first time. I mean, I had some pulled groins from football that hurt pretty bad, but that bout with gout was the first time I ever experienced acute pain, and it wasn't going to kill me. I mean, it's just there was just crystals throughout my dagger crystals throughout my joint, and it wasn't going to go away until they dissolved, and it wasn't going to kill me, even though I wished I was dead. So I totally get when somebody had some procedure or had an accident, and they're just like Tim's back pain. It's terrible when you have excruciating pain like that, and you can't really do much about it.
Yeah, that's this thing right here. That's where they put the new plate in, and then right up here at my wrist. I think they froze my wrist so that there's no chance that I can move the plate or bone anymore. I don't know. It's painful as hell. And they told me that I can't go to work at all next week, so I will be shamming here. Yeah, just sucks.
Oh,
but
darn.
consider this, Matt. When I was younger, and I'm sure all of us have done this, we like daydream about time traveling back. What they did to you to fix you up, imagine that happened like in the 13th century. You would have been you would have this weird ass arm for the rest of your life. So
I mean, just what we were talking about earlier with Eric. I mean, I had a stint put in, and I was home that night. I mean, I was behaving like normal. You know, he'd had you got like? Would you say you got a new one today?
Yeah, I had. My doc said, my surgeon before the surgery, you know what? Your PET exam with the stress test. He goes, these are often wrong. Yes, we should go in. We need to look at it, but odds are, and he's telling my wife this, he'll be out in 30 minutes after I take a few pics, after we do the prep. I'm sorry. He apologized for like me sitting there for 5 hours waiting on this, but neither here nor there. And it's because the prior procedure went to. He went in and it became much worse than he thought it was, and he is one of the top cardiac surgeons in the country because it's a heart hospital, and he's in charge of the damn program. So I was like, yeah, no harm, no foul. I'm still here. He goes in with me. I'm like, wow, I'm looking. You're always, every hospital room has a clock that you can watch, no matter where you are sat. Yep. And I'm looking at that clock going, shit, that time is going. And I hear him talking to the second surgeon, the one that views the photos in the adjoining room, and they're yelling back and forth over the hard rock music that the doc likes. And I'm like, I don't think, no, I want another shot of that. I'm like, what the fuck are they? And afterwards, he's like, well, that had a slight German accent because he's a German. And if you ask him where he's from, he goes, Brooklyn. But he's like, well, that went well. I'm like, well, I mean, what do you mean by well? He goes, well, there was, that stent was occluded. It was blocked. We cleared it. I'm like, all right, cool. But your main left artery was also 70% occluded. I went, huh? Didn't show up on any exam.
You're on Lipitor and all that stuff, and it's still.
Well, see, my issues are that about 15 years ago I had Hodgkin, so I had chemo and radiation, and the radiation was here, center mass, and left shoulder. So my left shoulder has stenosis from the radiation, and I'm getting issues with my heart, probably due to the radiation. My heart looks like it had a heart attack without having a heart attack.
The machine they used to put your stent on, what is it like? Was it like Tron?
Pretty much.
You could lay there and you looked over and you had just like this image of your whole body on the wall. It was
I have an image that to my left that I couldn't quite make out. Now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh man, it was the whole left side was just a bank of monitors.
Oh, no.
And you could literally watch, because they did mine up my leg. You could see it going up your leg, up into your chest, and into your heart.
That Tron one, that was the orange colored video when they were going through the arteries and the veins or whatever they're doing. That was like bizarrely interesting.
Yeah, and you're like alive and awake. Yeah,
and they have like other videos that they're like weird. Are black and white, and it's tracing the leads, the camera as it goes through your body, and then you hear a little like.
I didn't know. So whatever they used on me, I was the first person in Tennessee. I don't even know the name of the machine, but I was the first person in Tennessee that they used the machine on. It was just approved for use. Nice. And like doctors flew in from like Knoxville, and probably Atlanta. There were like 10 doctors there to observe it. I didn't know it. I just thought it was cool that I could watch the shit on the screen next to me going through my body.
Oh,
Yeah, I had an examination, a bowel examination, and I usually have a cast iron stomach when it comes to medical procedures and stuff.
Right.
And I never had this before. It's going to involve a camera. It should be interesting. I found out that the bowel examination is the one medical procedure that I cannot stand because it hit a certain point and I had to grab the metal gurney and my fist clenched because I was about to clock the doctor. And I realized that was not an appropriate response. So I'm sitting here restraining myself and I got a little glimpse and I really wanted to watch it. It was a total conflict of emotion. And I was just really bummed out about the experience because I couldn't watch this, whatever this thing. And Kellyanne was there, and she said, "Oh yeah, it was pretty neat. Seeing what the like." Okay,
Sorry guys, I am back.
I didn't get to see any of it.
The fellas were just making me feel great about my age, Joe.
Well, here's another. I mean,
their various health ailments.
My excuse for stepping away. I'll put it this way: do you guys remember being young 20s, maybe having a kid? And having a few drinks and things happen, crises and fights and bullshit.
You had a love child, Joe?
No, not me. So that's what I had.
You're talking drama.
That's what I had. 20-year-old. I mean, 20s have drama. Yeah, that's what I had diffused just now. So sorry about that. Well, those years are behind me by 25 years, but here we are resurrecting them again. Oh God.
Well, here I have a question going back to gaming for Rob and Greg. So you guys do all this work and pre-planning and build out the world, all these hexes and stuff. How much of that, that's not the right way to say it. So you start your game, and do you already have some sort of story in mind, like a story arc, or do you just let it go with the hexes and
I don't believe in a story. Actually, in the first chapter of my book, like for my game system, it talks about thinking of the game as a sport, and I think of it as you're going out on the field and you're doing your best. There's not a story of you. You're not setting up a story where you take the ball and you throw it for a long bomb into the end zone at just the right moment. It may just be a regular game. But there's going to be a game eventually where that thing happens. Some kind of amazing, cool thing happens. And it's amazing and cool because it happened randomly, not because you set it up that way.
I disagree on one level, Greg. Here's the thing. I think there is a story that I personally as a DM tell. But the story I tell is the story that's going on in the village, in the region of the country, in the county, in the nation, in the world, in that area of the world. There's a whole lot going on, right? And I in my own head am telling that story, and shit happens week to week, month to month, year to year in my player's campaign world. And if it's war on the larger scale, if it's skirmishes or battles on a smaller scale, political intrigue, drought, famine, whatever the hell it is, a goblin invasion all of a sudden or something, right? An avalanche or a bad snow. That's the story I'm telling. And the players, through their actions, write their own story in their own little niche of the world that may or may not interact with all of that stuff. That's the story I tell.
Well, my view is Buck's story. Is first of all, that's the short version. The long version is that I describe things. I imagine the place, and I start with either something very small or very large. It can come from any direction. Sometimes it starts out in the middle, and I build up and down, but I imagine a place, I imagine what is there, and I realize long ago I've come because I gained life experience after going to college, being on my own for the first time, so forth and so on. I realized but the situation is always more vast than what you can describe. Say, for example, you got a cave. What's in the cave? There's a tribe of orcs. Okay, there's a tribe of orcs. Who is in charge of the orcs? Okay, a chief. A chief can't rule by himself. Who's with the chief? He has his he has his what I call house Carl, his immediate bodyguards, his close buddies. He has his spouses. He has who else is there? Well, the orcs have religious belief. They have a shaman. The orcs may have these two crazy guys who like to go. They're the ones who find all the games that then they organize a hunt for it. But only they're the experts in finding the herd of deers or anything. And I just imagine what is it like for this tribe. And to keep myself honest, I will roll on a random table, and that a few times to get so my own prejudice and likes doesn't. So I get out of my rut and start off with a unique foundation. Then I flesh it out from there. And so basically I play this giant game of what? Okay, what if? What if this is here? What does that mean? And so what winds up happening is that I describe a location, and I describe the people who inhabit that location, and I describe how they're connected to each other. But I will stop because I don't have time to fully describe it like it was a real place. It's always more vast than I can describe it. So, but I leave threads that if a player decides to join a group of basket weaver, I can pick up that thread and start fleshing it out from there, even though it's unlikely that any group would pick to be associated with basket weaver. But I had groups I've been doing this for 40 years. Some groups made unusual choices that resulted in things that I didn't expect it to be described that I had to do some work on. So I hope that makes sense, but that's basically how I view it.
It's interesting.
Well, I was thinking, Joe, while Rob was talking about, you remember the orc that I shoved into a minecart? So Eric described that there's a minecart on a track. We capture the orc. It wasn't Eric's plan for me to take the orc, throw him in the minecart, cover him in lantern oil, and light him on fire.
You tied him up too.
Tied him up.
So that their head was above the oil.
Yeah.
And so they could only scream in pain as they got burnt alive. Quite epic.
Push him down the track so that all of his friends would chase after him down the track. Eric just described the place. That's what I'm saying. I don't want Eric to have this idea of they need to put the orc in the cart. That needs to just be something. That's where the story that you tell 10 years later is going to be what the players did, not your cool idea. I think sticking to having some kind of cool idea that you want to push out there. That's why people turn to story games and say, where did the bad GM touch you? I just let the players do what they're going to do. Now, if they come up with some insane plan, you're like, nah, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But there is a caveat. There is an important caveat in that if you run a sandbox, okay, and people have a really hard time, and I just recently got on a discussion on N-World that they just couldn't wrap around this concept I'm about to say. So you're in a sandbox, players are free at any point to go left versus right, whatever the concept of left and right means at that particular moment. They could choose to say join the military. They can choose to put themselves under orders. They can choose to swear to God. And in that case, when that happens, they're no longer free agents of their own choice. For whatever reason that seemed good to them at the time, they decide to join up. So when you do that, when you're in a situation like that, where now the player's life as their character in the setting is now mostly about following orders, and who's giving the order? The NPCs. Yeah. So it's hard for people to wrap their mind around that that's still a sandbox, because the players can desert at any time. They might not like the consequences. They might not never choose to deal with the consequences, that it's easier to continue following orders until it's legitimate to leave. But that's still a sandbox, because the players, not me, the players chose to put themselves under orders. Yeah. They chose to put, and that to me If the players do it, then it's a sandbox. If the group decides to do it, or the referee decides to do it, like in a railroad, like a traditional railroad, then that's not a sandbox. It may not be railroading.
It doesn't have to be a railroad. It could just be constrained. Like the alien modules are constrained. You know, you can't. You can only do a certain number of things. But you know, I'm playing in a Traveler game on Saturday nights where we're a group of mercenaries, and like there's contracts and stuff like that that the GMs is. We could just head off into the wild blue, but it would be kind of wasting all the work that he did to make all that stuff. But I mean, it doesn't have to be a railroad. You can still have choice, just constrained, limited choice.
Yeah, and you know, it's like a Star Trek campaign where you agree to be the crew of the USS Excelsior or something like that. You know, there's an out of game understanding that you're not going to desert Starfleet and become merchant trader in the Starfleet universe. So I mean, yeah, so groups can do that, and those campaigns can be fun. I mean, my preference is to have a wide-ranging sandbox. So it's very rare where I like to run a campaign like Star Trek, where you know the players are only going to be a crew. I'd rather like run a campaign where, hey, if you wanted to resign from Starfleet and become merchant crews, I'm okay with that. You know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, people constrain it so that they don't have to over design, like I was saying earlier. You know, like if you've limited it to you being where you're working for Starfleet, then the GM can design with that in mind.
It's like having a paladin in the group, really. Yeah. When you drop a paladin, like a DM run paladin NPC, you're acting as like the moral conscience of the group. It's the same kind of constraint, but in a different mechanism. You know what I mean? You're on a starship. You can only do so much on a starship.
I think one of the reasons why people struggle with Star Wars is because it's so open.
Yeah.
And the players could go any direction to anywhere. So, I want to go to Hoth. Like, why do you want to go to Hoth? Like, it just totally screwed up everything else that other people were doing. Like, it can get hard if you don't set up the right constraints.
Yes, but the thing is, and this is part, I hope in the fullness of time I get the right out fully. There are tools where you can have that. So if you run a Star Trek campaign, but with the constraint that you're going to remain a crew, that makes prep easier.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm more interested as an author and sharing what I'm sharing in the campaign where that is not a constraint. You start out as a crew of a starship, and so you're running that campaign with the possibility at any time that the players could choose to resign from Starfleet for whatever reason they feel best. So what can I do to make it manageable for myself so that the players have fun next week when they decide to go left and get on that merchant ship?
That goes on game prep, Rob. I mean, that's the other thing. Yeah, because I tell them, all right, so where are you at now? So give me a clue what you want to do next week. I've given you 5 options, and obviously it's a sandbox, but I don't have all 5 options fully developed. So do you think you're going to go? Which door are you going to open? So you got to prep.
Yeah, that I have done that. You experienced that in my campaign. There were not many times, but a few times I asked you, hey, what are you guys thinking about doing for next week so I can focus my efforts? And you tell me, and then you followed through.
That's a mutual respect thing because the DM wants to run a good game and the players want to enjoy a good game, but it takes, even though a sandbox is great in theory, right? You can do anything, anytime. But sure, go ahead. But sometimes if you just have unlimited sandbox with 0 prep, because you can't prep for any eventuality, all you're going to have is random encounters with a couple of bullshit dungeons that you make up on the spot with 5 rooms, right?
Well, okay, so here's the other thing about how to make the... Yes, sandbox has anything can go, but in reality, people invest in things in the game world as their character. They invest in who they know as NPCs. They invest in anything like a traditional investment of gold into a building or whatever. They start to build up stuff, and they're reluctant. See, the key thing about making a sandbox manageable is players don't want to throw anything away. Okay, so once they build up something that they perceive of value, like a connection, Like, just say, for example, in that one town where you're at the inn. Remember that inn that you stayed at, where you caught that spell that freaked everybody out? Suppose that went another way, and you develop a really tight relationship with that innkeep, and he gave you your own room. You would be reluctant to do anything that would trash that, right?
Yeah, but there's the kind of where did the bad GM touch you of I don't want to get too attached to this thing or else all of a sudden, oh, there's a goblin invasion. They're targeting the town. Oh, the guy's in danger. Oh,
Oh,
this is happening.
well,
Yeah,
that's
it all
it.
depends on being able to count on reasonable treatment.
And Rob does run a moral game. Rob runs a game with a certain set of morality,
Yes.
right, Rob? I mean, more so than most people. There's an implied setting morality of good and bad and go on missions and help quests and help people. So I got to say that goes to a certain style of play where if you're murder hobos in Rob's game, it's a mismatch. Safe to say, Rob? Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, the NPCs they're not going to like
Yeah.
people murdering. So
Yeah.
eventually they're going to catch up to you, turning you into a mule, and put yourself out in the city gates for 100 years, offering rides to anybody that comes by. And by the way, folks listening on it, that actually happened
This
in one of
sounds
my
very
campaigns.
specific. I was going to say.
This actually happened to a player in one of my campaigns, and Tim Shorts was the one who came up with it. But yeah, there was an elven player who fireball whole villages, and eventually, midway through the campaign, the elves caught up to him, and they it was so bad that when they bagged the party, the rest of the party just threw up their hands and said, "No, you can have him. He's crazy." You know, they knew they had. You know, he knew that he would.
So you're trying to say, Rob, that Tim Shorts came up with a horrific, scary, creepy, weird, horrible way to punish somebody in a D&D game? The hell you say?
That's
well, it was GURPS, but we were using D&D tropes, so
yeah, exactly.
But
Tim's game with the flowers kill your ass.
I'm the one who bagged the party. He was the one who role played the elven ruler, deciding out their punishment, or deciding out the character's punishment. And the character, in fact, if you were to go to that city in my campaign today, that character is still there as a mule, offering rides to anybody who approaches the gates of the elven city.
That's fantastic.
He's actually the most memorable. He's one of the most spectacular. A lot of it is more subtle, like what you experienced, where you got really uncomfortable sticking around human land.
Yeah, I was like, I gotta get the hell out of Dodge, man. I'm getting that look.
You know? But back to my point. My point is, Joe, if you would have made friends with that tavern keep, and that tavern keep would have given a suite of rooms for the party to use, and you had relationship with the town, and you were, you know, doing missions that were making you wealthy, you would be reluctant to do things to destroy all that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you put time into it and it's paying off for you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the secret sauce to my campaign. Is whatever, even the players that I've had who are like freebooters, they still, in spite of themselves, still develop connections that they're loath to destroy because it's making them wealthy. Like one group said, I don't want to deal with. They didn't want to talk to any NPCs. They just wanted to go to dungeon, kill things, get their loot. This was at a game store. This is their jam. This is all they wanted to do until I managed to get them to talk to a baron, and the baron was this jovial guy who likes to party, and he wanted certain things done that were up these characters' alleys, and they agreed, and they started getting the missions that started to pay off, and before they knew it, they were hobnobbing with this baron in spite of themselves, in spite of their rules, no talking to NPCs.
Yeah.
See, I find hatred is a stronger motivation, Rob. So
greed and hatred, huh?
If I really want the players to do something, then I will have somebody steal from them then run away.
Yeah.
Players will, if you steal one copper piece from a player, they will hunt you to the end of the earth. It doesn't matter. The fact that you stole, no player's like, oh well, It was just one cop. No, they're like, no, I will kill that man.
Yeah.
And so, if you don't even have to steal directly, but they come back to town and the guy says, oh, I already gave the 100 gold pieces to your friend. And I'm like, what? The guy who said he was part of your group, oh, now they're going to hunt that guy down.
Be a manhunt. Yeah, never ends.
Right. Yes. So, that's why you were like, oh, why didn't they want to help that young couple? If that young couple had stolen from us,
oh yeah,
we would
have.
Right. We would have been on their ass.
That's the
mismatch. You did deal with a young couple. You weren't jerks to them. I mean, you made an unusual choice, but in the end, you saved them from the orcs, and you had a nice conversation, and you, I think you even gave them a couple rations so they could get a. Yeah,
but Rob, in my head, that was the surface, right? In my head, what was going on, meta as a player was, listen, there's a young couple in the woods about 100 yards away, a couple hundred yards away, with a campfire. We're in the woods with a campfire, a little, 100 yards away. And I'm thinking there's number one, safety in numbers. Number two, I now have a red shirt shield in front of me in case we get jumped in the middle of the night by orcs. More than happy to sacrifice this young couple to the wolves if it means I can survive the fucking fight. There was no compassionate thing. It was more like, I'll do the right thing, all right. And then along the way, I'm going to have some meat shields maybe in case we get jumped in the middle of the night.
My plan was after we let them go that we would use
you didn't use them as
to
meat
benefit
shield.
us. Remember when I got to town and I tried to turn the guy into my servant because his son was the one that ran away?
Mm-hmm.
That it was never like, oh, we should do good by the people.
No.
That's not the D&D way. As far as I know, I mean, I'm not a perfect source of information here, but
no,
Joe, you acted pretty much. I mean, it's always nice to hear somebody who acts out of odds. I had one group that Josh. Tuesday night Josh was involved with, and they were definitely altruistic toward these kids. Okay. But your reaction, that's fine. That works. Mm-hmm. I have seen, sorry to bring up live action, but I've seen in live action, and you hear about this in life, where there are people who don't really have much in the way of goodness in their hearts, but, you didn't murder these kids. You just, you were willing to use them as meat shield. Fine, but it still worked out. It still worked out like you would expect if you were there. And then,
I'm just saying, I think there's a lot more Han Solos than Luke Skywalkers.
That's a good way to put it. I don't care if you're Luke Skywalker. See, that's the thing. I don't care if you're Luke Skywalker or Han Solo. It works either way.
Mm-hmm. And it did. It played out. The adventure played out well. In a different approach, right? I mean, me and Greg had a different approach, and it still worked out well.
And here's the thing. I don't know if you guys got this, but if you went into that village and all you did was shook down the abbot, took the tithe, and immediately end, that whole thing would have ended after 2 sessions. I would pull that trigger.
I was wondering about that, Rob, because you had all these other plot threads going on, and I was like, well, what if we just did the mission and said, fuck all the goody shit? Collected the money, broke some legs, maybe bend a thumb back to the wrist, and then say don't do it again, and then leave.
I actually advocated that the whole time. It was It was do-gooder Eric who wanted to help people and solve problems,
and he died for his troubles.
I know
he died for his troubles. See what happens when you try to do the good thing.
But it was worth the dying. I died.
I was an advocate for just coming back at night and killing him and taking the money.
That's a legit choice. There would have been consequences if this was part of a campaign, trust me. But on the other hand, the abbot was kind of stealing from the bishop. So the bishop, if you gave the bishop money, you role played with the bishop. What would you think? How would he react in that circumstances? Probably would have slapped your hand and then say, "Don't get caught next time," and kept you away and said, come back in 2 months, and then I can use you for something else after the heat dies down. Because you're a guy you're a group that is willing to get things done.
That's right.
And Bishop and people like the Bishop and Baron, you can use people like that.
Well, I've always loved the quote from the movie Spy Game where Robert Redford's character says, if it comes down to a choice between you and them, send flowers.
Nice.
But yeah, a lot of my problems when I get new players to my campaign, it's convincing them, don't read my mind. Don't worry what I don't or do not have prep. In the worst case scenario, what will happen is we'll end early for the night and we'll pick it up from the spot with me being prepared the next week. That's the worst
true.
case.
That is the best. That's the best thing a DM could do, Rob. Honestly, is because you don't want to give the players a subpar thing. You're all there to have a good time, and they got to understand. Sometimes you broke the night with whatever you did. There's no goddamn way they're prepared for it. You broke the night. We're gonna pause. We're gonna go home. Back next week or whatever. We'll start off based on the left turn you just made rather than the other turns I thought you would. You know, yeah. You got to do that. That's the only way to. It goes back to being a considerate player and an understanding DM. You know, you just got to get along.
And one thing I like to touch back out when I try to do, and I recommend anybody who tries to do this, when you role play as the NPC, they're not 100% dicks all the time. They're not always creating complications. That's not how life works, even in a fantastic world such as D&D. Instead, what you get is a bell curve. You'll get the on this side, you'll get a very few that always create complications for you that you get sick of very quickly. Then you start to get up this crest where they like some people create a lot of complications and not so many. And then on the other stream are the people who you can always rely on for help. Maybe it's some temple of the goddess of healing that, she's always had to smile. She always, she's there for you. And those are rare as well. But so it's important, and this is why I recommend the use of random tables for this with the odds suitably appropriate on the table.
2d6 reaction you're talking about.
The 2d6 reaction.
I agree.
And if the dice start skewing one way, forget the dice. Make sure that it's a balance between things that are complicating things for the players and things that are it just works out. And it doesn't have to be dramatic all the time either. It can be just simply, well, I got this sword that I'm trying to unload, so instead of 100 silver, I can let you have them for 75 silver a piece. And, it's not a great deal, but it's a deal.
Yeah.
So keep it mixed up.
I gotta disagree with you on the fudging.
No, you're hardcore. You don't fudge ever.
No fudging. If you don't want to do it, just don't roll dice. But if you roll dice,
stick to it.
You should fudge it. Like it unless it's like just you roll a fireball and it's all sixes and it's going to kill the whole party. Then say, hey, but I'd be honest about it. I would be like, this is going to kill everybody in the party, so I'm dialing it back like this. You're just gonna, this is how we're going to roll with it, or I'll just kill you. Like it. But I mean, I wouldn't. I just don't feel like. If you fudge the dice, you're breaking the bond of the dice making decisions, and you're taking over control.
Here's what I do fudge, Greg. Sometimes I don't fudge the dice roll so much as I'll fudge hit points, right? Especially if I realize that I fucked up on. I sent the Tarrasque against first level guy's equivalent, right? If I've really blown it in my own head, how balanced it should be, and I don't agree that there should always be game balance. Sometimes the things are hard, sometimes things are easy. But if I set something in my head that I thought was going to be, let's say, DEFCON 5, and turns into DEFCON 55, I'm like, fuck. You know what? The orc now has X amount of hit points less than what he used to have, and the fight's a little bit easier. That's what I'll do.
Yeah, but you're less likely to kill people than me.
The dice are an imperfect representation of how the world works. So if the dice doesn't, things are generally in the middle. So that's where I fudge. I don't fudge to the extremes. I fudge toward the middle.
Yeah. James Mala has a blog post on Grognardia called "The Oracular Power of Dice." It's basically that the dice is like consulting the oracle to decide what happens. I just feel like it's a great analogy. I feel like, either consult the oracle or don't. If you're not, if the guy is going to be a friendly NPC, then just say he's a friendly NPC. But if you roll the encounter roll and he's hates them, then he fucking hates them. You know, I mean, like, that's just the way it is. And if in the end everybody has to die, I'm fine with that. It's a game.
I think you're reading a little too much when I say fudge the die. I don't do it all the time.
Okay.
I mean, most of the time I'm rolling. It's just when I notice that the results are all skewing either too good or too bad, then I'll fudge it to the middle. Like the MPT will not be extremely friendly, but just friendly because I rolled extremely friendly like the last 2 times. I roll a lot of dice to make this stuff work. And so, there's only 36 probabilities on 2d6. There's only I forgot the exact 216 on 3d6. So when you roll that many times, you're gonna get runs where you're just like asshole, asshole, asshole. Wow, I'm just rolling a lot of assholes.
Maybe they just went into France. That's all it is. It could just be that everybody's culturally treating them like shit. That's fine. I got no problem with that.
Yeah. I'm saying you be a referee and use your discretion. Don't be a slave to. Don't be beholden to the dice.
Well, there's sometimes I just don't roll the dice, Rob. Sometimes if I see that something is askew, and not that I'll change a dice roll, I just won't roll the dice for that particular thing. What I'll do is I'll just say this guy's nice, or this thing happens, or whatever the case may be, to sort of bring it into balance again. You know, I just won't roll. I won't fudge the dice roll. I'll just say, you know what? Now I'm not going to roll here. I'm just going to say X, Y, Z. Joey's NPCs are all dicks. There you go. Or most are trying to bring Cthulhu back. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Well, it's like what I said in my Majestic Fantasy RPG. You know, you use the dice, but use it judicially. I mean, there are times when the PCs, when a situation's clear. I mean, either there's really nothing at stake and the shopkeep just doing his ordinary business. The players are not asking anything extraordinary out of the shopkeep.
Yeah.
They just want to see his raid. You don't roll a reaction roll for that.
Mm-hmm.
Unless they're asking for like a favor or being assholes, then you roll a reaction roll. But if it's a normal transaction, just assume that the shopkeep's there to do his job. You might have a note to say that this one shopkeeper is an asshole, and then that would be a different thing. But so the amount of times I'm rolling dice to see what's going on, it depends whether there's any stakes to it or not. If it's an ordinary reaction, then I do what you said, Joe. it just happens.
Yeah.
Well, I got no problem with the way you DM, Rob. I'm just pushing on a theoretical angle here.
I know.
I feel like it's a principle thing. I mean, part of the reason why we write our own rule sets is because those rule sets reflect the way that we feel GMing should be done. Right? Everybody has a different view.
Sure, and as Tim would know, I like to overthink all this stuff. So
that's why we love you, man.
I mean, ever since I figured out I could start publishing, I keep writing notes, and so I think about this stuff, and part of the reason why I just don't spit it out all the time is because it's one thing to think of what you do and write down some notes. It's another thing to write it in a way that's like useful for somebody where they could get something out of it. That's a lot harder.
Definitely.
Did you guys, when I was gone, talk about the thing that Tim was talked about in his podcast last week? The whole thing about OSR DMs and high-level games and all that?
No,
we didn't talk about high-level games. I think a lot of people never get to high-level games, so it's especially the harder the system is.
Yeah.
And it comes with, to me, it's a question of, do you want to play Empire Strikes Back or Guardians of the Galaxy? Like, if
way to look at it.
Yeah, if it's going to be superheroes with raccoon flying around and shit blown up and all kinds of crazy stuff, then hey, run the level up, man. But if it's going to be, one dude having to face some real serious problem in life, like, then it's going to be low level. I mean, like, it's just a matter of how much superhero stuff is going to be in the game to me.
Well, and that's a huge part of it too. Like when when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, we wanted to play high level characters. So what did you do? Well, you made the house rule: one adventure, one level. The only way you were going to see high levels in a year of gaming, even with multiple days, because you had to. If you were just going by experience points, it took forever.
Yeah.
And the idea was, well, if we just start at 10th level, it's cheating. We cheated to get to 10th level.
We never did that.
But it was just, we agreed that we were cheating as opposed to, oh no, taking it free levels are cheating.
That's like psionics rolls. All my characters had psionics. There's no fucking way they all rolled 97 or above on a D100 or whatever the hell it was in AD&D, right?
Yeah.
So we kept re-rolling until we got there. But yeah, I mean, what we played, my brother and I like the high level game, and I do house rule it because with my experience with high level games, there's some things that break the game. Like, and the way I explained it to you guys in the text that time was essentially pretend instead of saying, do you want to play D&D? Say it like this: do you want to come explore my imaginary world of make-believe with me? I'm going to use our imaginations, but we're also going to have some rules from this game called Dungeons and Dragons and some other rules that I've created or pulled from other places myself to help us explore this world. When you start doing it like that, then it's not like you're depriving a guy of a thing that he should have according to the D&D rule set at 15th level. When you house rule it away, what you're doing is you're saying, all right, these are the tools to use to explore and then play make-believe with me. Right. And so looking at those in those terms, because the setting, I think, in my eyes, dictates everything. And I don't like settings where fast travel, for example, is the rule. That's the biggest thing I nerf. I make it way more difficult to do things like teleport or travel somewhere very fast, like the old AD&D where you turn into wind, that cleric thing where you turn into wind walk, and he travels everywhere really fast and brings people. I don't like that because I think it changes the inherent nature of the setting. So I tend to house rule all that shit away. Right. But again, if you look at it in terms of you're not nerfing D&D, you're the DM is using some rules from D&D, some other rules, and there you go. So don't feel entitled to it. Right. You know what I'm saying?
There's a valid point to that. I don't know. I mean, low level play, D&D, D&D based games, I think, have different tiers. You've got low level play, levels 1 to 3, 1 to 4, mid level play. I don't know, 4 to 7, 4th level spells, maybe 4 to 8. And then high level play is once you hit like Limited Wish, Raise Dead, you change the nature of the game.
Absolutely.
And here's the thing too. Especially if you ever run, Joe, you ran one of the Giants modules for us years ago.
Yep, I remember that. Yeah.
We used the pre-gens, and the pre-gens
probably
had jack and shit in the way of actually having magic items.
But they had a lot of them had javelins of lightning. For some reason, javelins of lightning and potions of visibility were scattered throughout the whole damn thing.
but here's the thing: when you think of what your characters will have by playing through level 9, they'll have a lot more magic because it's the nature of the beast.
Yeah. If that was going to be my answer to John in the chat, is saying, like, does it feel like cheating with pre-gens? Because pre-gens aren't min-maxed.
Yeah,
but of you making all these decisions. Yeah.
So let me throw this out. I think, okay, so first of all, to answer the general question that Tim posed, I'm a bit weak on high level play because traditionally what happened, my campaign ends with the players making their mark somehow. They got a barony, they built a tavern, they did something that now they are established. And to play after that point is more about life. Like in one campaign that Tim was involved with, the campaign ended on with the player successfully building the tavern. So if we were to continue play on that, it would have been about them getting business for their tavern, dealing with threats to this tavern, and it could have been an interesting game, but it's completely different than what they were doing before, because they now have something to lose. They don't want to lose it, so their characters' lives become centered around what they built, and it always seems like a natural stopping point. And in the last couple of years, I wanted to try more traditional high level adventuring as represented some of the AD high level AD&D module with pre-gen. You actually go on an adventure. But I was thinking about how to rationalize that within my Majestic Waterlands setting, my Majestic Fantasy setting. And the way I think I got it, which I need to work on to get it refined, is high level adventurers, like any part of the campaign, they have a culture. There's a group of high level people throughout the world, your imaginary world, no matter what your premise is. If you have, whether you're using points like GURP, once you get up to a certain level of skill or level or power, you now are going to have a culture surrounding it. These high level people interact with each other. Some of them are friends, some of them are neutral, some of them are dicks to each other. And so I think the key to make high level play interesting is to figure out how to describe that culture for your world. Think about in our world, like in the 50s and 60s, you had the jet set, right? Remember hearing that term?
Right.
They had seemed like a life of their own that's far removed from the regular people working and living in New York and throughout the United States, around Europe. It's just like this whole other culture where they did this thing. They intersected with normal life in a lot of ways, but they really were kind of their own thing. Well, I think the way to make high level play work and keep it interesting is to think about what a high level culture looks like. And in a minute here, I'll try to share. If somebody else could put some comments on, talk about it while I hunt down this one thing I made. Oh
Yeah.
no, I had it. I have it here. Okay, so I gotta take this up, and now I
So
gotta
I'm talking
go.
to myself here. I was muted. I'm sorry, Rob. I got a high level game going. They're in the 20s right now. They're just 19 and 20th level, right? And they've done from kill the orc. Now they're affecting, because I said the story of the world goes on. There's big things happening in the world. Before, the story of the world was going on and it was barely affecting them, and now it's affecting them more because they're bigger players on the world stage. They've commanded armies, they ruled things, they're nobles. You see what I'm saying? So the impact of the big world events affects them more, and they can affect the big world events more, which goes to what you're saying, Rob, about the jet set, right? If you look at somebody like Henry Kissinger, he zips around the world except for France, where he's been declared a war criminal. He'll go to jail if he steps foot in France, from what I understand. But somebody like that jet sets around the world, and he interacts with all the powerful and all the hoity-toity of the world, and he affects things, and he is affected by things. The things that somebody like Kissinger or the other jet set people of the world read about in the New York Times or Wall Street Journal, what they're reading about is the same thing we are, but it affects them in an entirely different way. They're working at a higher level of intelligence and connections and power, and so what they're seeing and what they're understanding from that newspaper article is something very different than we are, and they're acting upon it. Whereas we just take it in, it's like, okay, doesn't affect me, whatever. They're out there doing something with it, right? That's the hoity-toity, jet set, powerful people of the world, and that's what I'm trying to get into with my game now. So that's sort of like a segue to what you're going to show us. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, so I have it up on the screen. So if you could bring that up.
Oh, Eric's got a share screen. Are you there, Eric? Still? No, he's absent. I don't have the power to share screen. Eric has to do it. So whenever he gets back,
use your GM skills to describe.
Yes, it's theater of the mind, Rob. Here we go. Let's see it.
Okay, so off in one corner of my Majestic Waterland, there is a mountain range called the Westwall. So that is the western border of the area from what I'm about to describe. And the northern part of it is called the Valley of the Dead Queen. Then just below that, it's a place called the Obsidian Citadel. And below that is a place called the Realm of the Demon Queen, which was once an imperial province of an empire of this region. But the empire collapsed in civil war, and this province happened to be taken over by a demon who's now the ruler. And so the players at this point are about 9th to 10th level, and they've heard about this, but they never dealt it because they knew they would just get slaughtered by the the things that are lived here. But once they started getting 8th level and 9th level, they started investigating, chasing down clues and stuff like that. And so basically, the general gist of this area for the challenge for them, first of all, the Valley of the Dead Queen is home to a bunch of vampire queens. There are 5 of them, each of them with their own complex. They're evil as shit, but in my campaign, vampires
Are they hot?
Some of them are, some of them are not.
There we go. Just a good start.
Are
any of them emo?
Emo.
Sorry, Rob.
Considering I started out with GURPS Vampires the Masquerade, yes, there are emotional vampires. Anyway, but not here. These are all anyway, you understand in a minute. So anyway, vampirism was created by the blood goddess as a way to curse her enemies to become her servants. You know, vampires are horrific creatures, and she thought it was suitable punishment. And so these are not, they're evil, but they're not, they also hate demons, okay? Because the goddess hates demons. In my world, all gods hate demons. There's no demon gods. There are demons and there are the gods. And some of the gods are evil and they hate demons too. And they just will do anything to kill demons, even if it kills other people. So then the Obsidian Citadel is a remnant of the old empire filled with high-level magic users. And they have their own society, and this Obsidian Citadel is one of the surviving places that are still thriving. So they sit on the southern border of the Valley of the Dead Queen, between them and the realm of the Demon Queen. And the Dead Queen have their plans, and they eventually want to take out the Demon Queen because they would be compelled, because they're compelled to by their goddess. And the Demon Queen has her own plan. So the players, they don't like vampires. They sure as fuck don't like these mages, these old Imperial mages, and they definitely don't want to deal with the Demon Queen because they know that, unlike any other NPCs, demons will always fuck you in the end. Excuse my language. But they will always. You might come out ahead a little bit, but they will always screw you over. That's just the nature of what demons are. They're not anti-heroes in my campaign. So there's a culture going on here. Yeah, their demons have cults, so there's that going on. Demon cults are crazy as shit, the way I portray them. So there's a culture going there, a high level. You have to be high level to be in this culture. If you're not high level, then you just become a slave or a serf or worse.
Yeah, survive it. Basically, you gotta be powerful enough to survive it, and not be killed by them. Yeah, I get it.
So there are opportunities in adventure, and there are more mundane adventures. Like there's a bunch of goblin tribe strongholds, which would be something a high level group could take on with relative ease. There are monsters roaming for various reasons. Like I have this place called the Surge Worms, which is basically it was a dumping ground for the Imperial Wizards magical constructs gone wrong, and the Third Worms happened to be the ones that survived and turned the whole landscape dangerous. And the wizards were the mages were happy about this because it kind of shielded them. It's to the south of them, which kind of like a minefield for any of the Demon Queens to come up north. So there's all this stuff for them to explore and interact with, but the few times they did interact, like one time, so the first time they actually did a strike, they went into the Valley of the Dead Queen. They picked the nearest citadel. They reconned the nearest citadel. They came up with a plan. They had tons of magic items. And, I know a lot of DMs in the OSR, including some here, that would be appalled at what this group had. They got it all legit. They saved their money. They invested wisely. Wound up with a boatload of magic items and about they were traveling with a group of there were 6 players and about 20 more NPCs of varying levels.
I think John makes a good point here. He says, where do so many early D&D modules were for high-level characters? I think, John, it's probably because it's like a tease. Because if you're going to play most of the early stuff, like the Giants, right? You go to a convention, you play this one-shot module, you get to play a 12th level guy or wherever the fuck it is, and you're seeing what life is like with, delayed blast, fireballs, limited wishes.
But that's just it, though. You just said why they were high-level adventures. They were tournament adventures. They were convention adventures that Gary and TSR at the time realized, holy shit, we have these pre-written products that we were using. How do we make money out of this?
Yeah.
Apparently, this stuff is selling, and that's why the original adventures that you would find. The Slavers, A1 to 4. Why did they all have pre-gens? They had pre-gens because they were convention modules. Some of them even gave you scoring, how to score it as a tournament.
Yeah.
Who the hell scored tournaments at home? Nobody did that.
No.
Could you share my screen, Eric?
Sure. Your screen is shared.
Oh, so this is the map. So this is the Valley of the Dead Queen, and these are their citadels. This is the Citadel of the Mage, the Obsidian Citadel, and down here are the various towns of the Realm of the Demon Queen, which was a former Imperial Providence.
All right.
And as you can
There's
see,
a lot of evil on that map, Rob.
Yeah, a lot of skulls, man. I'm not going there with my characters. I'm just saying, I avoid the skulls on the maps.
I mean, if I'm not going to go into the history, the in-game history here, but they accepted it because they knew the in-game history and it made sense to them. And actually, one of the first questions is, why are these vampire queens? Why haven't they done anything? They were actually sassing the vampire queen for not taking out the demon queen earlier, and I had to explain to them, well, the empire only fell 30 years ago. And these demon queens were on the edge of an entire empire at the time. So this is the last 30 years was the first time they really had an opportunity to do anything.
Yeah, expand their horizons, basically.
Right.
Swamp of Smudge. What is that called? What was that?
Smurge.
Smurge? We'll scroll down a little bit. Was that Swamp of who? Swamp of Smurge.
Yeah, I keep the original Judges Guild names when I can. Right. So you're gonna have to add if you ever in several decades, hopefully several decades from now, when you go to heaven, you can ask Bob Bledsoe Senior why you named it.
I thought that was the name of Tim's nut cheese there, Joe.
Smurge.
Well, eat some Smurge.
If you weren't going to be demonetized before, that might be doing it.
Smurge, the Smurge demonetization.
Smurge.
That's a good D&D character name too. Smurge. Yeah. Smurge. If you met a dude named Smurge, there's no way he's not a thief or somebody's going to fuck you over.
Like Smurge the Valiant.
So to finish up my story, is the players focused on this citadel, this citadel right here, and they made a plan, and they went and they hit the place, and they hit it hard, and they expended a lot of their shit trying to get this, and they almost, and you know why they almost lost? Because I mean, one thing is they caught the vampire queen totally by surprise. I mean, they took out her sentries. They were smart about it. They took out her sentry and then launched the maid assault. So she was blind. And so they were making headway, but she had an out. Remember, she's a vampire queen. They're undead. Do undead need air to survive? No. So her high-level magic user, he turned the dungeon into mud.
Nice.
The entire
swam
dungeon.
On out then.
Yeah, and the players, luckily, the mage player, as you know, in my games, you can hold your action and then react if something happened. So the players were like stealthing along, and this mage said, okay, I hold my action so he can cast a spell if something happened. So something happened, and so he cast a teleport and teleport himself. He was underground, so he was limited to where he could teleport to, but he picked a spot, and it happened to be just outside of where the mud hit.
Nice.
And so the players won in the end. In fact, they bagged the vampire queen and captured her, even though they almost lost that too because her escape route was to this mountain on a peak above the 8,000 meter line, where like you can't properly breathe.
Mm-hmm.
But does it affect an undead? No. So they teleported
Nor
there.
does the cold. Perfect.
They teleported there, and again, they struggled, but one player managed to pull it out, and they bagged her and grabbed her and managed to get out of there before they before they ran out of oxygen.
Nice. Yeah.
But so now they have a vampire queen in the bag, and they enslaved her by a Gia spell or something like that. And
we're getting kind of kinky here. I'm just picturing all kinds of leather and chains, vampire queen. I mean, I'm going all kinds of. I'm bringing back retro goth from the '90s here in my head. At least. I don't know, man.
You would think, but no, they're totally paranoid.
Oh
they think they. You remember what I said that I like to try to play NPCs as a mix of good and bad, but when it comes to these kind of NPCs, they know I would screw them at any opportunity. So they're super paranoid about.
Oh, that's like in Pulp Fiction. You know that if the Gimp got out of his fucking costume, he'd go all kinds of hog wild, but he was stuck in that costume with the chains and all that. He was that's why he was the Gimp. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. You let loose the Gimp, it's all over them. I think that's probably a good spot to end it. It's 10 o'clock. The Gimp has been released. What do you think?
No, I think that it's probably pretty good. I mean, hey, I had the hell of a day of medical procedure and a 10-hour hospital stay, coming back to no fucking internet, the hotspot not working. And now look at this. Look, it's all
here.
Roses, man. It's all roses now.
Roses. And the Gimp has been released. So what else do you need in life, really?
The only thing I'll say further on that whole thing was that whole sequence exposed my weakness in high-level adventures. So I really want to work on it so I get it right.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Folks, we are, I believe, at 1,241 subscribers to this channel. 9. Hold on, 9 away. I'm trying to get the right hand up there. 9 away. From me giving away $250.
Nice.
$100 on a Wednesday night, $50 on 2 consecutive Friday nights, $50 on a Saturday night. So no matter what live stream you enjoy, there's a way to enjoy it. And I believe I was looking earlier, because we were trying to figure out how to get Joe to properly be an admin on this channel.
Yeah, it didn't work. I couldn't start the game. Good thing you were here. I couldn't start the show otherwise.
But apparently there is a random feature for so you can have people in the chat make sure they use a certain keyword, and then you can have the random roll happen by StreamYard based upon the people that entered.
No shit, really?
Yes.
Wow.
So I gotta figure that. I gotta figure that out. Got to make more use of the goodies in here, the goodies. And as an aside, one of these weeks, because we're frustrating Bad Mike, because lots of he goes, "Oh man, you got a great topic I want to talk about." One of these weeks, I'm going to throw him a random invite and let him just pop in for the conversation that he wants to be part of.
Yep.
Pop out and go back to the shitter or whatever.
That's a good deal.
When he's done with it, and then come back in, because these are his people, man. They're all our people.
Yeah,
but we're going to have to find a few others that we might want to do that with.
Yeah.
So if you have ideas, leave them as a comment after this live stream as to who you think should be getting invited to the random show.
Yeah, and what you want to ask him about or talk about. We could do, hey, bring in so-and-so because I want to know about blah, 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 like Joe, for example, Joe Block, Greyhawk Grognard, right? He had just posted today on YouTube. I already liked it and made a comment that he is coming out with basically his game, Adventures Dark and Deep, Cthulhu supplements going live on Kickstarter soon. He put the pre-Kickstarter link out there so you could follow it and be notified. And I'm all things Cthulhu. I love that shit.
Oh,
So, looking forward to that. If you want to bring him in, talk about it,
Yeah. More Joe
No,
Blow?
hey, we can invite. I see Zach's in the channel, so we could invite him and talk about that Greyhawk map he's working on. The Darlene,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
Darlene restoration.
Show it off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't have to like be deep.
Sorry
in
to
the
put
weeds.
you on the spot, Zach.
Yeah, they don't have to be deep in the weeds with us for a full 2 hours, 2 hours
Mhm.
plus. Where sometimes somebody might say something, and you go, "Oh my god, I don't want to be part of this shit."
Yeah. Dip
Yeah,
in, dip out. That's all.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
you drop in, you drop out. Hey, paisano, what do you want? Listen, as a side note, because they always bring this up, COVID is still out there. It is real. We actually lost somebody in the gaming community earlier this week due to complications from COVID and pneumonia and a heart condition. So I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not saying wear a mask. I'm not saying get vaccinated if you aren't vaccinated. I'm saying you're all adults. And I can look at the analytics for this channel. I can pretty much say you're all adults. You're all adults. Use your common sense. All right. I mean that's all I ask, and that's all we can ask.
The odds are much reduced, but not zero.
Right. So, other than that, be safe, be well, God bless. Roll those dice, roll them well. Thank you to all the people that participated in our live stream.
Amen.
9-ish people. That's all we need, man, to give away
9 more. Tell a friend.
Tell a friend. Drive through. We'll give away them. We give away their credits, man. We give away their credits. All right, folks. On that note, we're out of here.
Later, guys.
See you later.
Thank you.